Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahashum, Rakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahashum, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. Shabbat Shalom. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson. And I'll be profiling a little bit of this clip from Sean Ryan Clips' YouTube channel titled The Real Reason Billionaires Are Building Doomsday Bunkers. And I'm going to jump around a bit just to hit the main points that line up with biblical prophecy, because these, billionaires, trillionaires, ultimately the elites have been building underground bunkers, undersea bases, and even low orbit space stations to protect themselves from the coming chaos that's about to engulf the entire world. Jacob's trouble, World War III, nuclear destruction. But in the midst of all that, Yahawashi, the Son of the Most High, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus, is going to make his second coming to save his elect. And, also, when Yahawashi and the elect come off those chariots, they're going to go to everywhere you elites and other higher-ups have hidden and slap chains on you, because you're ultimately being preserved to be the first fruits of slavery in the kingdom of heaven. And, I would recommend going back and watching this whole video in your own time, because it's got some very interesting information in it. But I'm going to start it at the 36-second mark. And this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
You had mentioned earlier, you think, all these billionaires are building these underground bunkers and they have this access. I know it's a fact.
Yep.
But that they have access to all this ancient knowledge through what, the occult?
Through the mystery schools.
At what point do you just get introduced like, oh, hey, you made it?
These glasses destroyed a multi-billion-dollar industry. Nobody believed me at first, but now everybody wants a pair.
Here's the.
You mean
here's
into the mystery schools?
You might want to build a bunker.
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. But
what is the occult? I'm new to all of this.
Okay, so the occult is a very general term. The occult can encompass your everyday Satanist.
That's kind of what I thought it was.
Yeah, the occult is a very broad term. The mystery schools are a little more specific. The mystery schools go back to the ancient times, and the function of the mystery school, fundamentally, is to preserve the knowledge of the antediluvian world, and more specifically, to preserve the knowledge that was transmitted to mankind by the gods who descended in the Golden Age.
And antediluvian, I think, means post-flood. So, post the flood that took place during Noah's time.
That is the purpose of the mystery schools. And there's various mystery schools around the world, but...
like what? What are they?
Well, you had the Elysian mysteries that were the ancient Greek mysteries. You had the Egyptian mysteries. You have the modern adaptations, like you had the Knights Templar, who were to some extent a mystery school. But then you had the Masons, the Freemasons,
which you're the elites, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the 13 bloodlines of the 13 families. All of them, they have all that knowledge. They've gathered it all up, and while they have the true meaning of it kept to themselves, they disseminate it throughout society, through signs and symbols, through Hollywood and movies, social media, these celebrities, all that, to secretly put this knowledge in the understanding of those ways unto the masses, to manipulate them and move them in whatever direction they want to.
Freemasonry.
Didn't the Templar turn into the Masons?
The Masons preserve some of the traditions of the Templar order. Yes, there's modifications, but fundamentally there's the let's say, the pillars of Masonry do come from, to some extent, from the Knights Templar. And so you have different variations of mystery schools.
And I know Ian talking about bunkers, but we're going somewhere with this.
No, this is the Illuminati, right? That would be a one faction of the mystery schools, or maybe a term that encompasses them all. And again, the primary purpose of the mystery schools is to preserve the knowledge that was transmitted by the gods to mankind in the antediluvian world before the cataclysm. The knowledge that was transmitted to mankind during the Golden Age, during Zep Tepi the first time. And that is functional knowledge, by the way. It's not just, it's not just sort of arcane, mysterious knowledge that pertains to, just bizarre stuff. No, we're talking about functional knowledge, information that is very important, that is transmitted.
That left-handed wisdom, that energia, or the workings of Satan, as it says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 to about, I believe, verses 5 or 6, that the man of sin, the son of perdition, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has been using to, as it says, sit in the seat of the Most High and try to shew himself as the Most High.
Through myths also. Myths transmit knowledge. The wise concocted those myths. The ancient sages they devised the myths. And we're talking about the famous myths from the ancients among the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Mesopotamians. What we today look at as bedtime stories. What we today view as folklore, and of course, historians and archaeologists and anthropologists don't really give much weight to these myths.
And hey, this is why America in the scriptures is known as a spiritual Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. And, in Revelation 17, mystery Babylon, the daughter of Babylon, Babylon the Great, because, the gods, the practices, the energy, and all that from those ancient, kingdoms have been repurposed and repackaged and used here in modern day America. It's not just for aesthetic purposes that you've got an obelisk or the Washington Monument. You've got a pyramid on the back of the $1 bill. All these different things.
So that's just Greek mythology. But the myths were intentionally designed to transmit information, to preserve information and transmit it through time. And it's done primarily through symbolism. Because languages change, right? Mm-hmm. Languages change. But the meaning of the symbols always remains the same.
So how do you think these guys get into, how do they get the knowledge? Have you thought about that?
You mean the people who are in the...
Yeah, the bunker builders.
So
they could just be worried about nuclear war.
There's a couple of things that's true. Yes, absolutely. That's certainly in play. But there's a couple of ways. One...
And so, yeah, talking about all these different mystery religions and all that. Well, actually, I'm going to just play the first 30 seconds.
You had mentioned earlier, you think, all these billionaires are building these underground bunkers.
The mystery schools go back to the ancient times. And the function of the mystery school, fundamentally, is to preserve the knowledge of the antediluvian world.
Again, they could just be worried about nuclear war.
We have deep underground military bases. I'm sure you're aware of that all over the world, but especially under the continental United States. We're talking 1 mile to 2 miles below the surface of the earth. I'll tell you what happened, and then the audience can draw their own conclusions. But during World War II.
So, going through the whole clip, which I'm gonna jump up a little bit and play a little more information, but what he's alluding to is that these billionaires and other higher-ups are building these bunkers, not just to shield themselves from the coming chaos of Jacob's trouble, but, to preserve this ancient knowledge. And, that's in the scriptures. The powers that be think that they're just going to, go to their hiding places, and after the dust settles, that they're just going to rise back to the surface like a phoenix and go back to business as usual. Well, hey, you're sadly mistaken. The next stop is slavery. So let's go to Isaiah chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 17 to 21. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and Yahweh alone shall be exalted in that day. When Jacob's trouble leading up to the nukes flying and Yahweh making his second coming with the armies of heaven, fleets of chariots, or what people refer to as so-called UFOs. You've got that 3-eye atlas thing floating around in space, and they're just divulging more information, talking about how we know that there are objects out in space, some the size of states, some bigger than the sun. That's because Yahweh is getting ready to make his second coming, and this just goes to show how close we are to the end of Esau Edom's rulership. And as I said, the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and Yahweh alone shall be exalted in that day, when they see that power of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai and know that they can't do a goddamn thing against it. And the idols he shall utterly abolish. So all this ancient wisdom, so-called wisdom, all this left-handed energy and these different gods and idols and stuff, when Yahweh makes his second coming, that's going to be the end of those things having any power at all. And they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth, going into deep underground bunkers for fear of Yahweh and for the glory of his majesty when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth, with those nuclear missiles. In that day shall a man cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats, and to go into the clefts of the rock and into the tops of the ragged rocks, for fear of Yahweh and for the glory of his majesty, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. Casting away those idols, because they're not going to be able to save them from Yahweh's second coming. And then, whatever knowledge they do bring down there, that's going to be wiped out when Yahweh and the 144,000 start going to these different areas and rounding them up so that they can get to work building up the kingdom of heaven. But just to show you the pride of these devils, even, when they're in slavery and see the power of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, they're still going to be wicked. That's why after that first 1,000 years of the kingdom of heaven, the Edomites are going to be the only nation that's going to be wiped off the face of the earth. They're going to try to, use that wisdom, or try to find other ways to circumvent their captivity, but it's going to be all for naught. But this is Revelation chapter 16. I'm going to read verses 1 to 2, then I'm going to jump around. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, Go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of the Most High upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the BEAST, which is that RFID/NFC micro C-hip implant in the head or in the forehead. And, you got Neuralink. And upon them which worshipped his image. So this is talking about those that receive, that digital mark, which we can see that's right around the corner. You had Keir Starmer, who I believe is the Prime Minister of the UK, saying that at the end of this parliament, it will be mandatory for you to have our digital ID if you want to work in Britain, And, the brothers, we did our Friday camp was, going into these different countries, talking about digital IDs, India, Russia, Switzerland, which, a lot of people in Sweden, though Switzerland is pushing a digital ID, a lot of people, and tens of thousands of people already have the C-hip in them. Even in America, they're talking about a digital ID. But, I say that to say, hey, that's just laying the groundwork for that physical mark that's going to be in people. But as it says, those that got it got a noisome and grievous sore upon them. CANCER sores, popping up on their skin, because, RFID stands for radio frequency identification, and NFC, near field communication. So you've got that those radio and Wi-Fi waves, which already mess with people and give them different diseases outside of their body. Having it inside your body, hey, it's going to cause even more health ailments. Again, these grievous sores popping up over you. But I'm going to jump down to verse 8. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire, those nuclear missiles, which, after the MOTB is mandatorily implemented, things are going to speed up rapidly. That's when World War III is going to kick off in full, and, Yahushua is going to make his second coming to save his elect, and nuclear missiles are going to be shot to the ends of the earth, which, again, goes into this fire that's going to scorch men. And men were scorched with great heat and blasphemed the name of the Most High, which had power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. So while, a lot of these people, are going to see that the things they believed in were for naught in that day, the haughtiness and the loftiness of men being brought low and then casting their idols away. Hey, you're going to have people that are going to still blaspheme, the Lord and his power, and still try to hold on to him, specifically, these elites that are going to try to bring those things into those clefts and those holes in the rock to try to preserve that ancient wisdom so that they can come back to the surface and try to rule again. Going back to that video from Sean Ryan, all this ancient wisdom and these mysteries of these different occult religions being brought into those bunkers. Verse 10, and the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongue for pain. Verse 11, and blasphemed the power of heaven because of their pains and sores, and repented not of their deeds. Here you see prophecy coming to pass right before your very eyes, but you still want to be a devil. Now I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 9. I'm going to read verses 18 to 21. Salakia. And the majority of this chapter, Revelation 9, is speaking about World War I. But, some of the verses have a dual meaning, talking about World War I and also talking about World War III. But this is Revelation 9, verse 18. And by these three was the third part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. And as I've gone into in previous lessons, you've got three classifications of men: the sons of God, who are the children of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans; the sons of men, the other heathen nations, such as the Moabites, the so-called Chinese, the Africans, who are the so-called Africans, who are the Hamites, the Ishmaelites, who are the so-called Arabs, and then you got the sons of the wicked, the Edomites, which is what this third part of men is talking about, because everywhere Edomites dwell on the face of the earth is going to get hit with nuclear missiles. But, outside of America, which is going to become an uninhabitable wasteland for the rest of eternity, other places will be built back up. So, on the one hand, talking about World War I, which, when it talks about fire issuing out of their mouths and out of their tails, can go into those biplanes, those biplanes they were using, which had a machine gun at the front and then had the tail gunner. And then when it's talking about World War III, talking about, those nuclear missiles, the fire issuing out of their mouth being the warhead at the front, and, the tail like a serpent at the back being the rocket booster. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. But as I said, for their power is in their mouth, that warhead where the missiles are at, And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass. All this great destruction taking place. But as we read back in Revelation 16, they saw these things, but they still blasphemed the name of the Most High and didn't give him his glory. And right here, it's talking about how, while this destruction took place, you're going to have those, specifically some of these elites that are still going to not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silvers of brass, and silver and brass. They're going to still try to hold on to these ancient religions and, mystery knowledge that gave them power when they were in rulership, and stone and of wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk. Verse 21, neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. And, when these Edomites are in hardcore slavery in the kingdom, they're still going to be the wicked. They're still going to have that, hey, it wasn't, why am I going through this hardcore slavery spirit? I didn't do anything wrong. That was my forefathers. Just as today, with the history of what they did to the Israelites, with the transatlantic slave trade, or what they still do in abusing the Israelites, they don't take any accountability for it. It's going to be no different in the kingdom. And like I just said, that is ultimately, why these Edomites, the entire nation is going to be, wiped off the face of the earth. But let's go back. Now I'm going to jump to the 5-minute and 32-second mark.
Let's just assume for a moment, and I don't know if it's true, okay? It's just a hypothesis. Let's assume that there is a body out there in the solar system that's coming back in, that's on this path around the sun, that gets slingshotted back out into outer space, comes back around every 6,480 years. Maybe we've detected it. Maybe NASA's detected it.
And I think he's talking about that 3-eye atlas, which, Esau's going to put a spin on it, try to explain it away. But regardless, we know that Yahawashi is coming with a massive fathership that's so large, Esdras couldn't see, the end of it. As it says in 2nd Esdras chapter 13, and he's also coming with a fleet of chariots. So just keep that in mind.
Maybe some of our military satellites up there have detected this body that's coming into our solar system. And that, I think, would prompt, the building of underground bunkers. We have deep underground military bases.
And hey, that's in prophecy as well. This is Revelation chapter 6. I'm going to start at verse 12. And the header reads, the sixth seal, terror. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, those nuclear missiles being shot to the ends of the earth, to make the earth rock to and fro like a drunkard, as it says in Isaiah 24. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Those nuclear missiles looking like stars falling from heaven, and you see them, coming, down from the sky, because, they go up high, into the atmosphere and then come back down. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. And, that's talking about the mushroom cloud, because when it goes up, it billows into itself and looks like a scroll being rolled together. And every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, the elites, trillionaires, billionaires, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, these other higher ups, those in the military, some of these politicians, and every bondman and every freeman hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. There are different bug out locations, underground bunkers, bases within mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, Yahweh, the Most High, and from the wrath of the Lamb, Yahweh Shai, his son. And what did that guy just say? With these satellites picking up these different objects moving around in space, I could see that as a reason for building, these underground bunkers. Hey, the elites know Yahweh Shai is getting ready to make a second coming. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? And as we've been going into with these precepts, no one will be able to stand. The lofty looks of men and the haughtiness of men shall be brought low in that day, and only, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai alone shall be exalted.
I'm sure you're aware of that all over the world, but especially under the continental United States. We're talking 1 mile to 2 miles below the surface of the earth. And it was
1 mile to 2 miles
below the surface of the earth. Yes.
I just watched this documentary last night about how Russia dug basically a hole. They got, I think, 7.1 miles deep.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't go anymore. Nobody else has done.
That's it with that clip. But hey, as we can see, these underground bunkers are being built, and these elites, those that repent, that are not going to repent for their wickedness and their sorceries, and not want to cast down those idols, and those different mystery religions are going to try to preserve them in those bunkers with themselves to try to come back to the surface and rebuild. But as we've also been going into, that's not going to be the case. The only thing you're being preserved for is for slavery, and all that ancient wisdom of wickedness is going to finally be rooted out of the face of the earth. And anyone in these bunkers in America, or even on above ground in America, that is not of the 1/3 of the elect, hey, you're going to be completely destroyed. Nothing's going to save you. But this is Isaiah chapter 24. I'm going to read verses 19 to 22. The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard. The earth shaking from those nuclear missiles being shot to the ends of it during World War III, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth, the elites, the powers that be, that are running things from behind the scenes. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, in their bunkers, underground bases, undersea bases. And after many days they shall be visited, when Yahweh Shai and the 144,000 come down off those chariots and begin rounding you up to be the first fruits of slavery. This is Amos chapter 9. I'm going to read verses 1 to 3. And I saw Yahweh standing upon the altar, and he said, smite the lintel of the door, that the posts may shake, and cut them in the head, all of them, and I will slay the last of them with the sword. He that fleeth of them shall not flee away, and he that escapeth of them shall not be delivered. Speaking of, again, those elites, they won't be able to flee or escape from, the wrath of the Lamb and his 144,000, though they dig into hell. And when you go into that word hell in the Strong's, it's Sheol, which means the grave or underground. So what? Underground bunkers. Then shalt mine hand take them. Hey, they shall be visited that are in the pit. Though they climb up to heaven, having low orbit space stations, thence will I bring them down. being snatched from up there. And though they hide themselves in the top of Carmel, which was a mountain, so having mountain bases, think of NORAD, I will search and take them out thence. And though they be hid from my sight in the bottom of the sea, luxury submarines which they have, undersea bases, they even have undersea highways, thence will I command the serpent, and he shall bite them. So not only are the 144,000 going for them undersea, but Leviathan is going to come for them as well. And what's crazy is a brother just posted in our chat that a drone, I believe, somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico caught an image of the biggest octopus ever seen, and it looked like something out of Pirates of the Caribbean. So hey, the Lord is revealing never before seen things, newly created creatures, as it says in Sirach, for Jacob's trouble, the time that is at hand. But now I'm gonna close it out in Psalms 149. I'll read the whole thing. It's only 9 verses. Israel invoked to praise Yahweh. Praise ye Yahweh, sing unto Yahweh a new song, and his praise in the congregation of the saints, which is what the elect are doing. They're singing that song right now, that the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the Israelites, and that you heathen nations are going to go down and, go into slavery. And then, when the elect are beamed up on those chariots, they're definitely going to be singing that new song of salvation and praise to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, just like, the song of Moses that the Israelites spoke, after they came out of Egypt during the Exodus, and, saw the Lord save them from those Egyptians when he opened up the Red Sea and let them pass, but closed it upon the Egyptians and Pharaoh. Let Israel rejoice in him that made him. Let the children of Zion be joyful in their king. Let them praise his name in the dance. Let them sing praises unto him with the timbrel and harp. For Yahweh taketh pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation, beginning with the elect. And then the wicked of our people that are cut off, they're going to come through the loins of the elect, righteous forevermore. Let the saints be joyful in glory. Let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of the Most High be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand, to execute vengeance upon the heathen and punishments upon the people, to bind their kings with chains, the elites and their nobles with fetters of iron. These billionaires, these other higher-ups. And, being in chains and fetters of iron means what? Slavery. And like I've been saying all throughout the lesson, a lot of you elites and higher-ups are going to survive just so you can be the first fruits of slavery in the kingdom of heaven. To execute upon them the judgment written, this honor have all his saints. Praise ye Yahweh. And these times are very near to come. So that's it with this lesson. With this lesson, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shabbat Shalom.